I'm always going to tell my friends. If I see or catch my friend's man cheating or any kind of evidence that he is married or living foul, I'm going to tell my friend with receipts. I just, that's just how I roll. I just cannot live with myself and talk to you and kiki ha ha with you. And I know that your man is living foul and you just out here looking crazy. I just can't do that. In the instance that you decide to go against that and kind of brush me off or brush the situation off and keep going and keep working it out, then that's your decision. I gave you the evidence. Now it's up to you to make the decision about it. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Pretty Suited Podcast, where we discuss career, culture, and commitment through the lens of some of the most iconic characters in Black entertainment. I am your host and your homegirl, Lauren A. How are y'all doing today? As you can see, my tagline changed a little bit just because I wanted to spice things up a little bit. You know, as you guys know, I'm your personal development guide. And while I think personal development is important, very important, I think that it shouldn't be stuffy. And in my real life, I'm very much a huge fan of anything 90s and 2000s pop culture, music, television, and film. So I said, well, why not blend the two? You know, I was actually watching Living Single the other day, and I was just thinking to myself, man, if I could be one of those girls, homegirl, and we could just talk about some of the wild things that they've been doing, I felt like I would have fit right in. I would have fit right in that brownstone. So I said, you know what? I think I want to incorporate that into Pretty Suited so that we can talk through the lens of some of these characters, our favorite characters, and just like if we were there, what would we say? And instead of it being so stuffy, like as a homegirl to homegirl, let me hold your hand. That's the kind of vibe I want to give off. With that being said, I just need to start by saying I'm a foodie. Okay, I am very much a foodie. I love food. Food is a big part of my life, right? And if you grew up in the South, you normally had three components to a dish, right? You had your entree, you had your two sides. And we all love a good side. I love a good side. I feel like sides are just as important as the main dish. And I'm going somewhere with this. But as a side dish, you know, you can either hit or miss with a side dish, but they're usually easier to make. I would say usually than the protein. The protein, the main dish is really kind of like the highlight of the plate. And the analogy of the main dish versus the side dish can be used in a lot of different areas beyond food. We can use it in this case when it comes to relationships. It brings me to the very first episode of Living Single. Living Single is one of the Hallmark Black shows that premiered in about 1993. As you know, in the 90s, there was a plethora of Black TV shows, but this one stood out because it came on right around Martin. It told the tale of four women who they had different personalities, and you literally could see yourself in each one of the personalities. You had Sinclair Brown, who was the quirky, ditzy, but naive, but funny kind of character. You had Khadijah James, who was Queen Latifah, who had her mind right, who had her vision and her assertiveness, and also a splash of femininity that kind of made her your girl's girl. And then you had Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, who was literally the Maverick, as her nickname was, and she was every bit of a go-getter, and she went after what she wanted. She was a lawyer, and she was the best friend of Khadijah, who owned her own magazine and was making her way. And then lastly was Khadijah's childhood friend or cousin, Regine, where they grew up in the same neighborhood, and she grew up modestly. She grew up modestly, but when she grew up, she was a person who admired the finer things in life. As soon as she stepped onto the screen in the first episode, you knew that she was that girl, or in her mind, she was that girl, right? So she had the designer clothes. She had maybe a couple knockoff brands, but you didn't know that, right? She had her hair done. She had her nails done. She had the jewelry. And it was just really one of the first characters I saw on television as a young girl, who just was the classy but somewhat ratchet Bougetto, And I admired her. I thought that she was witty and she knew what she wanted. So in this character, in this first episode, you saw how much she valued money. She valued men with money, despite her upbringings, despite, her living in a brownstone with two other women, three if you count Max because she never went home. But yeah, you saw the personality just right off bat that she just was a admirer of money and men with money. And in that particular episode, she was seeing a guy. She named all the things that he brought to the table that she wanted.
What is long, black, and at the curb?
I ain't touching it.
I just came by to tell you that the limo outside happens to belong to my new boyfriend, Brad.
Who could blame her? Honestly, like, the things that he possessed before we even saw what he looked like, any other woman would be like, okay, well, I see where you're going with this. I get it, right? And it wasn't until we figured out that he was married, based on his wife coming in and introducing herself, and now everybody's in shock. Until that happened, we was all for Regine getting her Prince Charming. Like, who wouldn't want a man who had some money, who had, who was not afraid to court her? He picked her up in limousines. He, gave her gifts and things like that. So we thought that she found her one. She was even ready to talk about getting married and moving out. Like, it was that serious initially. But it wasn't until we found out that he was married that we were kind of like, well, I guess it was too good to be true. And so, unfortunately, though, like many cases, you kind of see the full breadth of Regine and her motivation or her decision to keep seeing Brad. Because, like, in most cases, that does happen. Why? Because they are usually given some sob story.
Just want a chance to explain, please. And just give me a few minutes.
Which was exactly what he did. Some sob story about how he's not leaving his wife. They're getting ready to be divorced. It just takes a lot of time. And she wants to take my money. And all of the other foolishness that comes out of their mouth other than I am divorced. Because nobody's mad that you were married. If you're a good catch, I'm sure you were going to get married. I mean, what you had your pickings. However, you probably should not be dating, especially dating seriously, if you are still married. That's just what I believe. That's your business. That's just what I believe. And so, just like with many girls, you kind of can see really the breadth of what a person is willing to put up with based on who they really are. Now, let me break this down. I feel like, but despite all of the glitz and glamour and the fake jewelry, but fake or real jewelry, the hair, the press-on nails, all the things that Regine kind of put on to, showcase a certain image, the bottom line is that Regine came from humble beginnings. And while it's not true that every woman who comes from humble beginnings wants this big extravagant life, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that when you have been raised in an environment that you maybe missed a few meals, your utilities weren't paid all the time, and you had to go cold or hot, due to lack of air conditioner or heating, rent was late a couple of times, whatever circumstances happened when you had those humble beginnings, sometimes you reach for the stars for situations where that doesn't happen again. I talked about it in a previous episode of poverty trauma and how it can affect you as an adult. In that show, Regine had to be in her 20s. And I'm just assuming that coming from a modest beginning prompted her to find a suitor that would make sure that she didn't go back to that situation again. And once you realize what she was putting up with, you thinking to yourself, you're beautiful, you have what it takes. Like, there's plenty of fish in the sea. There's no reason why you should be dating this married man, knowing that he wasn't really going to leave his wife. But you're just hoping that it's the case because At the end of the day, she wants to be chosen. She wants to be saved. And for many women, there's nothing wrong with you valuing security. Every woman wants to feel secure and protected and cared for and adored and courted and all those great things that we see, in our fairy tales. But I think that the expense of what we put up with to have that image, to have those things happen, that is where it could get sticky. That's where it could get sticky. And I think that's the case here. As Khadijah and Maxine and Sinclair tried to tell her that he's not leaving his wife, she just wasn't hearing it.
I know that he is going to leave his wife, and then he's going to marry me.
She just wasn't hearing it because in her mind, that cannot happen. I have to be chosen. This is what I put my time and my effort into, and this is the outcome that I want to have. And a lot of times when that happens, we do get blind. Like women, it's just what it is. There's no judgment. It's just that we become blind because that's not the outcome that we see for ourselves, despite the red flags that are in front of our faces. And so that's the crazy part about this whole thing. And so I felt for her. I wanted to just be like, girl. And and Khadijah just got super defensive. And that's understandably so, because you want what's best for your cousin, but I feel like at the end of the day, that's one of the lessons that you just have to kind of like step back and let somebody see for themselves. If they have evidence to prove that this is true. Now she said, you can't expect people to believe he said, she said. Like, that's just not smart, right? You need to come with some receipts. I need to see some pictures, some manuscripts. I need to see court dates. I need to see all that. But at the end of the day too, when you have all that and you still decide to make the choice that may be against your best interest, as a friend, as your homegirl, I kind of have to step back and be like, hey, that's kind of what you want to do. More power to you. If you like it, I love it. That's really the gist of that whole thing. Sometimes you really just cannot tell your friends that that person is doing you wrong. Now, what me personally, I'm always going to tell my friends. If I see or catch my friend's man cheating or any kind of evidence that he is married or living foul, I'm going to tell my friend with receipts. That's just how I roll. That's just my moral compass. I just cannot live with myself and talk to you and kiki ha ha with you. And I know that your man is living foul and you're just out here looking crazy. I just can't do that. But if you, in the instance that you decide to go against that and kind of brush me off or brush the situation off and keep going and keep working it out, then that's your decision. I gave you the evidence. Now it's up to you to make the decision about it. And so Khadijah took that standpoint. Her friends took that standpoint and just, backed up and just said, girl, do what you do. And so, unfortunately, at the end, as we have all seen, it didn't work out and homegirl got left on red. He was supposed to take her out and he straight ghosted her. She was left sitting in the living room eating Cheetos and M&Ms just like the rest of them. And, that bubble was popped. That Delulu bubble was popped. Because why? At the end of the day, we knew the outcome that he was not going to leave his wife. And she just thought that she was going to get chosen. Because ultimately, that was what it was all about. Her being chosen. Every girl wants to feel chosen. And when that doesn't happen, you feel devastated. But it was a wake-up call, though, for her in that situation. It was a wake-up call for her to understand that, going against your best interests, sometimes when you have that gut feeling, when you have the evidence in front of you, ignoring those red flags can really set you back mentally, spiritually, physically, in situations. And then you end up resenting your own self for ignoring that God's gift, that intuition to go the other way. But at the end of that episode is one of my favorite scenes is when they're all together while she eating her Cheetos and M&Ms, just mad that this keeps happening to her. Khadijah made a valid point. The men, they're not as dumb as we think, right? And any person, man or woman, who sees what a person is willing to bend, like their moral standard, not just something as small as like, oh, well, we're going to compromise and just have fish tonight instead of chicken. No, we're not talking about light stuff, not light compromises. We're not talking about that. We're talking about moral compass stuff. Like, are you bending those things just to have me around? And if you are dealing with a real trash person, they're going to take advantage of that. I know it sounds wild and it's totally fucked up. But at the end of the day, it's going to happen because if you're dealing with a person who wants to have their cake and eat it too, then they're going to take advantage of your desperation and adaptability to situations that you know does not sit right with you. You know your mother didn't raise you like that. And yeah, now if you're dealing with a decent person, they're going to be like, hey, I know this is not what you want. I know that you deserve better than this. Let me step away. Let me just step back and let you live your life. A real person would do that. A real person would say, hey, I know this is not your cup of tea. I know you deserve to have a husband, somebody who cares about you, who treats you right, and who's not committed to somebody else. Instead, you have certain people who will take that and run with it as long as you allow them to. As long as you allow them to. People only do what you allow them to do. And so, like any other woman dealing with a situation like that, we have to really take a look at ourselves and say, would we want somebody to bend their morals like that for us? Would we want to, be seen as somebody who is so desperate for attention and love that we're willing to do whatever it takes to get it? I don't know. I don't know if that's like the best way to go about getting what you need, because at the end of the day, you're going to end up resenting them. You're going to end up resenting them and yourself. But some can argue that you can't really act like a main dish if you're a side, and don't act like a side if you're a main dish. And I think in that moment, Regine was acting like a side, and she had main dish energy. So now let's get into our watch list of the week. So this week's watches of the week is, of course, going to tie into the subject of, you are what you settle for. It's based on the show, The Ultimatum. Now, I must say, The Ultimatum is one of those shows that, of course, people cannot get enough of on Netflix. It's one of those dating shows. But this one's a little bit different because it kind of ties into the storyline of what you're willing to put up with or what you're willing to settle for. This show, I haven't seen the current season, but in previous seasons, the theme is the same. You have a couple who wants to either stay together or leave each other based on the experience that they have in that household, a short little time span of being able to date other people. Do you see what you have at home and want to, get married? Or do you want to kind of just say, hey, I'm ready to get back in these streets? And so that is what this show is all about. Now, I will say a lot of it is very toxic because a lot of the people who come there with the ultimatum of choose me or don't choose me, 9 times out of 10, they are going to want to marry that person because they don't want somebody else to have them. I can't stand to see it. Like, it's one thing for you. You've been together for 5 years and you said you don't know, you're not ready, all the things that people say, once they don't want to get married and they just can't tell the person that they don't want to get married. But now all of a sudden in 3 days, you want to get married to this girl or to this guy because you see how other people are looking at them, how they're able to kind of like turn heads, how they're able to, connect with a person that's other than you. and that kind of shakes your bones a bit, and now you want to get married to them, please miss me with that. Okay. Like, I don't ever want that to be the case for me. I want you to be able to say that I want to make you my wife because that is what I want, and that is the trajectory that I see this relationship going. Despite all else, I have no doubts about it. That's what I would like. Don't you ever try to wife me up because you don't want nobody else to have me. That's crazy. Why does that sound so romantic to other people, right? It goes back to Regine being chosen. When people get chose, that just makes them feel like, okay, my knight has saved the day. Everything is okay. But once that relationship kind of goes along, once that relationship kind of like trickles on, you end up getting that resentment. It never fails. I've seen it several times. You get that other person who was kind of pressured into marrying that other person, they start to feel resentment for that other person for prematurely making them get married before they were even ready. And they usually have a higher incidence of cheating. They have a higher incidence of, not putting a lot of effort into the relationship. They have a higher incidence of making you wait for children. It's a lot of things that happen in that space because that person truly was not ready to get married. But because they saw how good of a catch you were, they didn't want you to get away and have to start over with somebody else. I don't like that. And that is the whole premise of this show. I feel like that's the whole, some of them really do see the error of their ways and, actually, get married or pop the question because that's what they wanted for real. But then some of them really just go along with it because they're just selfish and they don't want to see you be happy with anybody else. And I think that that's very trifling. So yeah, check that out. If you're a type of person who like those kind of shows, Nicholas Shea and his wife are on a tear. They have several of these kinds of shows. Love is Blind, and I think Love Island. There's a couple other ones, but they're just on a tear with these kind of shows, and they're just showcasing how relationships really are today and how much work we have to do, honestly. Now let's get into our tune of the week. So our tune of the weeks are going to start to change a little bit too, because I want to showcase some songs that were very popular in the year of the character that we talked about today. So for example, Regine was on Living Single. It premiered in 1993. And in 1993, y'all, I was looking through what was popping in 1993 and it was just so many hits. Hit after hit after hit after hit from every genre, from pop, R&B, hip hop. It doesn't matter. It was just hit after hit. And it just had me thinking, like, it's just amazing how much good music we had back then. But I digress. But in 1993, Queen, as of course she was a character on the show too, dropped a song from her third studio album, Black Rain, in 1993 with the song called Who You Calling a UNITY? You gotta let them know UNITY, that's the unity. Like, how can you not forget that song? That song is everything. I love that song. I just posted it on my Instagram not so long ago, just because it just makes me feel super proud to be a woman. She was not playing any games in that song. She was basically walking down the street and getting looks and just the crowd of dudes just disrespectful. And she had to let them know. I'm not the one, the two, or the three. I am a black woman and you got to respect me as such. And so that kind of song really was during the movement of like empowerment, really a movement of us recognizing our strength, recognizing who we were, recognizing the diaspora of the Black experience. And I really appreciated her image and her message during this time. She was all about being a queen. She was all about being respected. She was all about New Jersey. And that is the jam. Throwback. So go back and run that up. It is UNITY by Queen Latifah. So that brings us to the end of this inaugural switch up episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. I enjoyed doing it. Again, going back to my own personality, kind of blending it into personal development and seeing how we can, as millennials, like find ways to do this in a relatable way. And yeah, let's talk about it. Talk about what you guys think of Regine. Talk about your experience with that episode. Talk about, if you've ever been in a situation like that. I'd like to know. So leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe to the page. I will be posting more often. I'm excited to share this stuff with you guys. I'm excited to talk to you guys. And yeah, follow me on Instagram at @TheLaurenA. And I will see you guys next time. As always, you cannot manifest the life you don't feel like you deserve. So create the life that you want and look to the sky for grace. Bye-bye.